So this happened about 2 years ago when I was 20. A little backstory. I'm quite a small female. I was doing some shopping in town, alone. I still remember that it was a warm Sunday afternoon. People were out with families, and it was quite busy in the city center. I had some free time, so I decided on paying my grandma a visit. To get to her place, you need to take a 20-minute bus ride from where I was. So, to the story. I was waiting for my bus, and I noticed this man staring at me. He wasn't much older than I was, and I still remember he had on a bright yellow hat. I usually don't really care when someone looks at me, but this man was staring at me with a sort of anger, like I had done something to him. Most people in the bus stop were either facing the traffic or looking at the coming buses, but not him. He had his back to the traffic and was just staring at me. I had a weird feeling about him, but I saw my bus coming and just hoped he wouldn't get on it. Except he did. I quickly sat in a window seat, and lucky for me, this old lady sat next to me. This old lady was like a shield between me and this guy. He stood next to our seat almost the whole ride, except for pacing around oddly a couple of times. I was already quite freaked out and was texting my at-the-time boyfriend throughout it. While he hadn't actually done anything to me, I just had a really bad gut feeling. A few stops before mine, the old lady sadly got off the bus. The guy's behavior became even weirder. He sat next to me, which made me completely tense up. I refused to even look at my phone or text anyone in case he saw anything he could use to look me up later. I think he sensed me tensing up, so he got up and went back to either standing next to my seat or pacing around the bus. My stop came, and I waited until the last moment to get off the bus. Sadly, he also managed to get off the bus. What followed confirmed that he was indeed after me. I guess in an attempt to put me off again, he ran ahead of me on the road and kept glancing back. Him doing so actually gave me the only out from the situation. You see, if he would have kept walking behind me, I would have been forced to A. Either make a run for the apartment door and hope I was fast enough to close the door before him, or B. Run in another direction and just hope I would have reached any place safe before him. I was out of the city center now, and there weren't many people around either to help me. So in that split moment, I decided to turn around, walk in the other direction, and dial my mom. It's pretty bad, but I decided to call my mom in case anything happened to me, so she would know who it was. I told my mom what happened, and she told me to make a run for it. Down the road, there was this small burger place that would have a security guard. She told me to run for it and just tell them what was going on, so I did. I glanced back and saw this guy running after me, which almost made me cry. Luckily, I reached the burger place before he caught me. From the window, I saw him crossing the road. I guess him seeing me get into the burger place threw him off. I have no idea why he fixated on me, or what his plans were if he caught me. I'm not sure I even want to know. So creep in the yellow hat, let's not meet again. My aunt and uncle's house was in a small desert town. They had about 4 acres of land and a good amount of space between neighbors. On the back of their property, there was a fenced-in area with a large shed and an old salvaged U-Haul moving truck. I was visiting for a couple of weeks one summer. My little cousin and I were about 10 and 12 at the time. One morning, we were roaming the property by ourselves. The adults were all out running errands. We ended up walking between the fence and the old moving truck. We were on the passenger side of the truck, walking from the back towards the front. All of a sudden, my cousin just froze. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up instantly. He didn't make a noise and just pointed at the side mirror. In the reflection, we could see a man sitting in the driver's seat. His face was caked in dirt and blood. He was moving around quickly, and at one point he ducked out of our view. We instantly turned and sprinted back to the house. We locked all the doors and called the cops and family. We were freaking out, running from room to room, looking out the windows, brandishing baseball bats. The police and family showed up after about 15 to 20 minutes. They searched all over, but never found the man. They found the fence was bent down where he must have climbed over it. There was blood and dirt smeared all over the driver's seat of the truck. He must have been trying to steal it because the ignition wires were pulled out like he was trying to hotwire it. No explanation for the blood. Nothing happened after that. My cousin and I had nightmares for the next few nights. That's about it. I'm currently 29 female, and this took place when I was 14. I had just started 8th grade. I grew up in Southeast Texas, and as I'm sure many of y'all know, fall is still very much part of hurricane season. It was Friday night, and it was just me and my mom at home. My dad was out of town for work. I originally had plans to go spend the night at a friend's house, but there was a tropical storm coming, and my mom decided last minute that she would rather have me home that night. I was pissed. Tropical storms weren't normally looked at too seriously. I honestly felt like she was overreacting. Of course, this was my I'm 14 and therefore so grown up mentality at work here. My mom did feel bad, and so we rented a bunch of movies, ordered a pizza, and got a bunch of ice cream for a great night in. My parents' bedroom was on the opposite end of the house from mine. This is important for later. We lived in a split-level house. The house I grew up in was built in 1950 and was a postmodern style. Think Frank Lloyd Wright. The entire back part of the house was all floor-to-ceiling windows, about 8 to 9 feet tall. Think of just a huge wall of glass. The whole house was an open floor plan, so the kitchen was the first defined room, with walls on the first floor, and my bedroom was directly off of the kitchen, while my parents' room was at the top of the stairs. I apologize if this is difficult to visualize. This was a modern-style house, and it's difficult to describe. She had gone to bed around 10 p.m., and I went to my room to watch 2 movies that I had rented for just myself. The storm was really starting to kick into high gear. The wind was picking up, and it was raining sideways. I was in the middle of watching The New Guy, and I still remember looking at my clock, and it saying 12:53 a.m. I was getting tired, and I could feel my eyes getting heavy. With the weather so bad, I remember thinking that maybe it wasn't so bad I had to miss the sleepover. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I remember is a huge crash. It was one of the big windows in either the dining room or living room. Our neighborhood was in a really wooded area, and I thought that a tree or branch had fallen in the storm and had broken the window. I left my room and went out through the kitchen. Right as I was approaching the doorway from the kitchen to the dining room, I could see my mom coming down the stairs. I saw a man standing in our dining room covered in broken glass and blood. Due to where he was standing, I couldn't get to my mom. He was young, early 20s, and was soaking wet and had no shoes on. He had literally run through our window. He was bleeding all over, had glass sticking out of him, and was standing barefoot in a bunch of broken glass. It took him a second to register both me and my mom, but when he did, he immediately launched into an explanation of how he was being chased by someone who wanted to kill him, and we needed to call the cops. My still fairly innocent 14-year-old brain didn't doubt this at all, but my mom was eyeing him suspiciously. We move into the kitchen, and my mom grabs her purse and my arm to keep me close. I had grabbed a kitchen towel to try and help his bleeding. My mom pulls out her cell phone and starts calling our neighborhood patrol. I noticed this, and so on our landline, I call 911. We both finish our calls, and now we're just waiting. The guy couldn't sit still and kept getting up and looking through our kitchen windows and pacing back and forth. He didn't seem to notice that he was all cut up and bleeding everywhere. He starts muttering under his breath. What happens next happens really fast and becomes blurry a bit. But the doorbell rings. It was our neighborhood patrol that my mom had called. The doorbell sent the guy into a panic. He jumps up, and suddenly he grabs a hold of me. He has me in a chokehold, and my mom is now screaming to please let me go. He starts looking around all frantic and is pulling me through the dining room and living room towards our stairs. At some point, the bell rings again. My mom is following, still begging to let me go. He has me at the stairs, and my mom has the choice now to go to the front door to open it or follow him up the stairs. She runs for the door just as he pulls me up the last of the stairs. I hear our alarm start blaring. Normally, we arm it at night, so you would need to type in the code before opening a door. He pulls me into my parents' room, but as soon as we get into the room, he drops me and starts to freak out. It was apparently all the lights. He starts smashing the lamps, trying to get all the lights off, screaming that they were burning him. There's a small garden off my parents' bedroom, and they have garden lights they turn on at night. He takes a chair and throws it at the glass door, trying to smash it so he can get to those lights. At least that's what it looks like. I had crawled to a corner to get away from him at this point. When he completely turns away from me to grab another chair, I make my run for it. I run down the stairs. The cops had made it into the house at this point, and were at the bottom of the stairs with their guns drawn. One of them grabs my arm and pulls me out of the way once I reach the bottom and takes me outside to an ambulance and my mom. The adrenaline is coming down, and it hits me what's happened, and I start shaking, and I can suddenly feel pain around my throat from where he'd been holding me in a chokehold. There's a lot of yelling and screaming from inside, and then maybe 10 minutes later, the cops come out with a guy in handcuffs. He sees me and tries to lunge at me, which was terrifying. I had a bruised windpipe, but was otherwise okay. I learned later that the guy was 20 years old and a chemistry major at one of the universities in town, together with some friends, also chem students. They had made their own PCP. He had never tried PCP before and had a bad reaction. They had been driving to get some food when he first started acting paranoid and upset, and then at the drive-thru insisted that they let him out and took off. Thinking you're being chased is a common hallucination to have when you start having a bad trip on PCP. Light sensitivity is also a common side effect in general for being high on PCP, but he wasn't a bad kid. He'd never been in trouble before, was a good student, and pretty much the last person you'd think of that would do something like this. Our house was the only one on our street that wasn't completely fenced off, and that's how he was able to reach the back and those windows. When I got older, it really hit me just how easy it is to become that kid. I had friends who wound up being chemistry majors and also DIY'd some of their own drugs. Thankfully, the night didn't end up worse, because it definitely could have gone in an entirely different direction. Hey friends, I just wanted to end this video by thanking you for your continued support. You all mean so much to me, and I hope that you're doing well. Please comment and like if you enjoyed. Take good care, and sweet dreams.